6 shir about brain death, but we haven't actually discussed the topic yet for some reason or other. But we're going to get to there. We are definitely going to get to there. But I feel if we invested so much time, at least 2 weeks, about the famous machlokes, it's one of the biggest machlokes in history amongst the Jews. At least maybe the Rambam machlokes with the rest of Rabbi Yoina. Maybe that was the bigger machlokes at the time, but because the Rambam. But it's one of the biggest machlokes. If we invested so much time in it, I want to just bring up some points, and each of these points would be good. Each of these points would be a share on its own, actually, but I'm not going to spend another 10 weeks on this. And that's it. This week is it. Maybe, probably, right? Like what did the raven? What did the raven say? Nevermore, right? You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about. Oh, right? You do know what I'm talking about. Very good. So we're going to get to this year about incarnations and Poltergeist. I'm going to get to the raven, and I forgot what else I wrote about, and about Chanukkah. Also about Chanukkah. Taxidermy is a stuff. You take an animal, you kill it, you stuff it, and you put it on your wall. Like you go into these lodges where they hunt moose. You see a moose on over the fireplace. That's called taxidermy. Okay, we'll see how this all relates. So now, first of all, I don't know. I found this whole thing very shocking. The little bit I'm looking into this, there are literally hundreds, maybe thousands of books written on the subject about Yaakov Emden, Rabbi Yonatan, about Shabtai Tzvi, about Kabbalah in general. And most of the authors are not religious people. It's unbelievable. And I'm looking at these papers, looking at the authors. Some of them are not Jewish. Most of them are not religious. And there seems to be tons of money being poured into this. Grants are given for this, and tons of research. And I'm just shocked by this whole thing. And people who are not religious are so into this. I just find it mind-boggling. But that's what it does. I couldn't believe it. Be it as it may. If we believe, which is what the Haredi camp believes, Rabbi Yonatan Eibschitz was not a Shabtai Tzvi. Again, the secular camp and the scholastic camp believes that he was, hands down. They're all 100% sure that he was a Sabbatian. He definitely was a Shabtai Tzvi follower. Which again, it sounds ludicrous, but if we're in the Haredi camp and we basically what? No, Haredi camp either leaves it alone or holds that he's not. So why did this happen to him? Why in the world did this happen to him, that he was hounded and that he thought everyone accused him of being Shabtai Tzvi? So the Baal Shem Tov asked this question. The Baal Shem Tov himself, who lived around that time, asked this question. Why did it happen to him? And he said he knows the answer was revealed to him from the Shemayim. It's very well known, the Baal Shem Tov says this. It was because he was a Gilgal of who? No, not Shabtai. He was a Gilgal of Yonatan ben Gershom. Now, who in the world is Yonatan ben Gershom? Who's he? So we have Gemaras about Yonatan ben Gershom. He is actually Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson, right? And the Gemaras about Yonatan ben Gershom, and astounding Gemaras, and I'll tell you what I find so perplexing about it. But be as it may, we all know there's a famous story in Shoftim, right? We got to bring our handy Navi here. Something called Pesel Micha, right? The story in Shoftim about, I'm not going to go through the whole entire story, but basically, if you remember, in one of the famous Midrashim, Moshe Rabbeinu complained to God when they thought that the Egyptians are using a baby as a brick. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, God, how can you allow such a tragedy? How can you allow such an atrocity? Something like we could ask by what happened in October 7th, right? How can you allow such a thing? And God said, listen, everything I do is for good. So God said, you know what, Moshe, you want? I'll take out the one baby you want me to take out. Anyway, it turned out this baby was Micha, who at the end of the day created an Avodah Zarah that was a stumbling block for Klal Yisrael for basically until the first Gulf, until the first exile. And this story, the baby wasn't killed. Hashem said, you want to take him out? Take him out, and you'll see what's going to happen. I'm doing the kid a favor by killing him, because I know what he's going to develop into. This is a medrash, right? It's a medrash, take it as you want. Here's the medrash. You have a story of Pesel Micha, famous story, in the Navi and Shoftim over there. It says at the end of the day over there, who was the Kohen Gadol, or who was the head priest of this Pesel Micha? Right, the whole story's there. Micha made it, then it got abducted by Yeshivat Ohr. And you look it up, Perek Ches, I'm sure you all know it. So basically, who was the head priest of Pesel Micha? So it says over there, Yonasan ben Gershom ben Menashe. So the Gemara already said, if you look at the way it's written, the Menashe is written with a small nun. It's a hanging nun, it's called. A hanging nun. The Gemara says this was actually Yonasan ben Gershom ben Moshe. It wasn't Menashe. It was Moshe's grandson. And the Gemara talks about how could it be? Moshe. So the Gemara talks about why it says Menashe. It's alluding to Shevet Menashe that did avodah zarah. Then the Gemara says it's kedai that you should make sure that when you marry into a good family. Why should you marry into a good family? Because Aaron married into Yosef's family, and his grandson was Pinchas. And Moshe married into Yisro's family, and his grandson was this Yonasan, who was seemingly a priest of Avodah Zarah. And then it talks here about making sure that you try to get married into a good family. Famous Gemara. What?
He married into Yehuda. In our marriage to Yehuda?
Yeah. Yehuda and Yosef. You're right. He married. The Gemara says he married. Aaron married into Yehuda and into Yosef, and Moshe married into Yisro's family. And the Gemara says, didn't Aaron also marry into Yisro's family? A whole Gemara here. At the end of the day, it says that Aaron made sure to marry into a good family, a good pedigree, and that's why his grandchildren were good. And Moshe messed up. There's a famous medrash that also Moshe made a deal with Yisro. Yisro said, I'll give you Sipporah, but only if you let your children, you don't send them to a Haredi education, you let them make their own choices, because Yisro was very proud that he was a Baal Tshuva. He was very proud that he made his own choices, right? But at the end of the day, he wasn't religious or whatever. He didn't believe in, he wasn't believe in God, he didn't believe in monotheism, and he figured out later on in his life. So he wanted his children or grandchildren to have the same experience. Anyway, so Moshe agreed. So for some reason or other, because of that, this Yonasan was created, that it was a taina on Moshe that he agreed to such type of stipulations. Peter the May. That's the Gemara doesn't say, that's also another medrash. Peter the May, the Gemara says over here that how could it be that the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu is doing avodah zarah? How could it be? The Gemara says he wasn't really doing avodah zarah. We'll see more in the Yishalmi. We'll see the Yishalmi better. The Gemara says here in Baba Basra, he wasn't really doing avodah zarah. So what was he doing? He needed a job. He had no job. And therefore, he didn't believe in any of this avodah zarah stuff. He wasn't an idolater. But parnasa is parnasa. And he said, they asked him, the people who came, the Micha, whatever, the heads of Dun said, I don't understand, what are you doing? You're Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson. Do you believe in this stuff? No, I don't believe in stuff. But such I have a Kabbalah from Avi Abba. Who's that? Moshe Rabbeinu, right? He's a grandson. That what? You should rent yourself out, or you should wage yourself out. You should work for avodah zarah, and do not rely on alms. Do not rely on tzedakah. Al yistorach lebrius. Okay. So listen. If Moshe Zayda said, basically, don't go to Koilel, he said, basically, Al yistorach lebrius. He said, no. Even if it means avodah zarah, do avodah zarah. So therefore, that's why I'm doing it. I couldn't get a job. Now, this is the part that's a little confusing. He couldn't get a job. The grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't get a job. He couldn't get a job at Shalom Nation with Ohr Somayach. Nothing happened. Garnish. They couldn't put him in the yeshiva. Something. He couldn't become a taxi driver. What's the Klal Yisrael do? That's the part that I can't figure out. But I think the pshat is that is exactly the pshat. He could have gotten a job. He could have said, you know who I am? I'm the grandson of Moshe Rabbeinu. That's exactly what he understood. That Moshe Rabbeinu said, Al yistorach lebrius, don't use nepotism. Don't use your protexia like we say in Hebrew. Get a job that no one would think you got it because of your heritage or because of your status. So he said, which job could I get that no one will think I got it because of Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson. Working for Avodah Zarah. No one's going to think I got to go to Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson. That's my interpretation. I don't know. It's very strange. Peter the May. So the Gemara says, "Oy, Yonasan ben Menashe ben Moshe." You got it wrong. That's not what he meant. Moshe Rabbeinu didn't mean that. You made a mistake. What Moshe Rabbeinu meant, not that you could do avodah zara, idolatry. Avodah zara, avodah shezara loy. Moshe meant that if you need money, you need a parnasa, don't rely on stock, don't rely on charity. Do an avodah, do a work that may be foreign to you, or maybe you're antithetical to it. Like he says, Rav Kahana, the great Rav Kahana, he would flay nevelas. That was his job. He was a tanner. Rav Kahana was a big tzaddik, and he said, "I'm going to flay." He didn't have a parnasa. He became a tanner. Basically, he flayed carcasses, and I don't know if he was the tanner part. He was the one who flayed the skins. Right? Fine. That's the story. Now it says over here this David saw. So I don't know why Moshe got the wrong interpretation, but he took the interpretation literally. You do avodah zarah. So again, he didn't really believe in idolatry. It was just a way for him to get a job. And the people, the Yeshivat Don and Micha said, "You know what? We don't care that you don't believe in it. To have a Kohen Gadol as Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson, what a covet." So they said, "We don't care you don't believe in it. You just make believe you're the high priest. It's good for business. It's good for business to have Moshe Rabbeinu's grandson to be the Kohen Gadol." Fine. And the Gemara says over here, since David HaMelech saw that this Yonasan ben Moshe really loved money, he made him into what? He appointed him to be an accountant, like a good Jewish accountant. Because the Gemara said, because it says in the Divrei Yam brings down all the jobs that David allotted, and it says here he gave this Yonasan a job as an accountant. Now right away she's saying, David HaMelech? Wow, David HaMelech lived 400 years after he went out of Mitzrayim. He's still alive? That's pretty amazing. And in Divrei Yam he's not called Yonasan, he's called Shvuel. Why? Sheshav Kel B'Kol Leiv. Because Yonasan ben Moshe did tshuva, he got a good job, an accountant, and he stopped doing avodah zarah. That's the story here in Bava Basra. We're all familiar with that story. In Yishalmi, it actually has a little bit of a tragic ending, because he brings down here my question. Because if you look at the pasuk, it's something even more amazing. It says that Yonasan ben Gershon is in Shoftim, right? Yonasan ben Gershon ben Menashe ben Moshe, he was a kohen l'shevet Dun, because like I said, Dun stole the idol. Ad Yom Goz Mitzrayim, until the day that the Jews were exiled. Well, the Jews were exiled 800 years after they went out of Mitzrayim, right? Right? Because they went out of Mitzrayim, they waited 480 years until they built the Beis Hamikdash, and then the Beis Hamikdash lasted 410 years. It took close to 900 years after they went out of Mitzrayim. So he was still alive then? He was still alive until then? So who asked this question? Yishalmi asked this question. He says, he goes through the whole thing, that's not Menashe, it's really Yonasan ben Moshe, it's really the grandson of Moshe, and he went off the derech, right? Even from the best mishpachas, you can have a kid that goes off the derech. You see, Adoy Shtei, what should I tell you? So they said, he was a Kaimer, right? He was a priest for Avodah Zarah, and he lived so long. What's going on here? So he says, well, the truth is, he says exactly how Gemara says. He really wasn't a priest for Avodah Zarah, and he used his job as a way to deprecate the Avodah Zarah. He was a high priest, but he's really like a mole. He really was he really was a subversive, a double agent. Why? What happened? And he was also cheap. That much we figured out. He said he was cheap. That we figured out. He said people used to come to this Avodah Zarah, this Micha Avodah Zarah, and they would bring these big cows and birds and goats, and they said, "Okay, you're the Kohen Gadol, Yonasan, bring it up." And he would say, what do you need to bring such expensive stuff to the Avodah Zarah? He's not going to eat it. You're just going to burn it. You're wasting his time. He doesn't eat. He doesn't drink. And they were like, wait a minute. Aren't you the high priest? Yeah, but trust me. You don't gotta give such expensive stuff. So they said, so what should we do? So he said, you know what? I'll tell you what. It's okay. Just give a little flour and put some 10 eggs in it. And it seems that Yonason, we'll see in a minute, he was already an old man, so he couldn't eat meat. And he said, no, that's going to be good enough. Just leave this here. I'll give it to the Avodah Zarah. It's good enough. Anyway, the whole thing is pretty much a farce. And when they left, he would eat it himself. He would eat the flour. So they figured, so he didn't want the meat because he couldn't eat the meat. He was an old man already, so it was hard for him to digest it. So he wanted this very puri. It's basically this porridge, this egg. Fine. So they asked him after a while. They figured what was going on. So what are you doing this for? He says the same thing. What should I tell you? What should I tell you? Moshe Rabbeinu said, I can't get a job. I can't get a normal job. I got to work for Avodah Zarah. So David Melech said the same thing. That's why he lived so long. The reason why he lived so long, it was sort of like he got, even though he's doing Avodah Zarah, but he really disparaged Avodah Zarah, he deprecated, so for that he got a Rikas Yom. So he's like this quasi situation. He served Avodah Zarah, but he didn't really believe in it, but he needed a parnasa, right? So then David Melech said, you know what? It seems like you like money. I'll make you an accountant. Fine, great. But then it says, wait a minute, so he became an accountant, so great. He did tshuva, he became an accountant, everything is wonderful. So what does it mean here that it says that he served Avodah Zarah until the day of Golus, which means basically Sancheriv, whatever. Sancheriv or Nebuchadnezzar probably means Sancheriv, right? We know that the first base in the Mikdash, 150 years before Nebuchadnezzar came, there was a Golus Sancheriv. We're talking about Shevet Dun over here, so it's probably when the 10 tribes are lost, right? Remember the 10 tribes are lost? That probably means they're by Sancheriv, not by Nebuchadnezzar. But he doesn't make, it's still 800 years. So so wait a minute. So we said he did tshuva because David HaMelech gave him a job as an accountant. So he did tshuva. So what does it say here that he's serving Avodah Zarah until Sancheriv, which is way after David HaMelech, which is 250 years after David HaMelech, 300 years. So Gemara asks this question. You shot me. So he says what happened was Shlomo HaMelech, when he got the job, he hired. He cleaned that house, right? Right? When the president comes in, the Democrat and the Republic, what does the new president do? Fires everyone, right? So that's it. I don't know why Shlomo decided to fire him. And since he got fired, he said, "No, what should I do? I got to go back to my old job." And he went back to being the high priest of Avodah Zarah because he had no choice. He needed a parnasa. Again, why could no one give this guy to be a taxi driver or something? I have no idea. But this is what it is. This is Gemara. So it says about Shem Tov, this Rabbi Yonason, it's about Shem Tov, not me. He knows for a fact was the Gilgal of this Yonason ben Gershon. Was this Yonason ben Gershon? He was connected to Avodah Zarah, but he really didn't do Avodah Zarah. But he had a connection. So Yonason had to come back to get a kapara. He came back a kapara Yonason ben Aibshis. So what happened to him? People thought that he was connected to Avodah Zarah, even though he really wasn't connected to Avodah Zarah. So it was that type of similar thing that everyone thought he was doing Avodah Zarah, and he really wasn't. But it's a kapara for Yonason, who also everyone thought he was doing Avodah Zarah, but in principle he didn't believe in Avodah Zarah. This is the Baal Shem Tov's famous understanding of Rabbi Yonason Eibshitz. Yeah.
Why did David Melech fire him? That job that he had was giving a Yom. It was good for him, the job. Him being a mole was good for him. Why did David Melech fire him?
That's a good. Wait, again. It wasn't. He got a Rikas Yomim because bottom line is he didn't respect Avodah Zarah. But David Melech told him so I don't know the answer, but it's wrong what he's doing because when Moshe Rabbeinu said that if you can't get parnasa, you should do Avodah Zarah. What does it mean? It doesn't mean you should actually serve Avodah Zarah or work for Avodah Zarah. It means you should do a job that is antithetical to your position, right? You become a taxi driver. A regular Shiva should become a taxi driver per se. I'm not getting involved in nowadays what she's going to call not. That's not today's shir. But so you can't say the other way. But, so it was a mixed thing. On one hand, he was doing an avera, but on the other hand, it sort of got him a rikas yom. So I don't know exactly how to answer that question. That's a good question. So if it's an avera, how to get a rikas yom? I don't know exactly how to answer that question. The bottom line is David HaMelech gave him a job, which you would think that he should die. He should die right then and there. That's it. Now he's not doing the Avodah Zarah anymore. But like I said, he got fired right away. David HaMelech was king for 40 years, but he's really king for 30 years, whatever. And then he went back to doing the Avodah Zarah. quasi avodah zarah, and then he lived all the way until Sancheri's goes. Okay? Peter the May, this is the famous Baal Shem Tov that Yonatan ben Aishas was the Gilgal of who? Of Yonatan ben Gershom. So why am I telling you this? I want you to know who Yonatan ben Gershom is. You should just know. Every mishpacha got its issues. Okay, there you go. Now, do we believe in reincarnation? Definitely Baal Shem Tov did, right? Right, definitely Baal Shem Tov did based on this word. I didn't in the previous lifetime, but this lifetime I'm reconsidering, right? And that's a big, I'll let you answer Gottlieb and Rabbi to that big question. Is it one of the main tenets of Judaism to believe in reincarnation, or you don't have to believe in it? It's a big mafalek, whether you have to or don't have to. From Sadi Goyin says it doesn't exist, but obviously the Mekubal holds it does exist, and definitely the Baal Shem Tov would hold that it does exist. We're not going to get about. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a story that happened to me, and I was not going to say this. So we got to the reincarnation part of this year. I was not going to say this because this is really like off the charts. But something happened to me this morning, and I felt that it was a sign that I should say it. What is the sign? So we have here our purebred in-house Sephardi, Yitzchak Reuben, right? Now, how a guy named Reuben is our in-house Sephardi, our purebred Sephardi? It also makes you stop asking questions. You don't have to get more questions. But Reuben is our expert on Sephardi, on all stuff that has to do with Sephardi and Hagim. And he saw that I was going to give a shit about Nathan of Gaza. And he says, you know Rabbi Yehuda Fatiyah. You know the stories of Yehuda Fatiyah. Fatiyah. And I'm like, Yehuda Fatiyah? Rabbi Yehuda Fatiyah? I said, isn't that a Sephardi rabbi? I knew something of the name. Yehuda Fatiyah. He says, yeah, sure. He said, sure. He got Nathan of Gaza. He got Nathan of Gaza to go to Gehenna. I'm like, yeah, he figured he's going to go to Gehenna for what he did. He got like half a Klal Yisrael to believe in Shabtai Tzvi, and it was a real. He said, no, you got to read it. So he gives you the book. Here it is. This is a rabbi who lived 1850 to 1940. He actually lived in Eretz Yisrael, and he was a Talmud Muvik of who? The Ben Ishai. Now, like, I'm an Ashkenazi, and I know all these rabbis from Europe, but you should know each Iran, Iraq, and Tunisia, they all have their own school of rabbis. Big Talmid Chacham, big stuff. I just don't know about them. But really big people who are big Talmid Chacham and big Mekubalim. So I said, okay, I'll look at it. Why not? So this is a book all about. So again, we're talking about someone who didn't die so long ago. It's all about how he about his connection with D-books and with saving ghosts and dreams and Gilgulim and to exorcism. He was big into that. So he brings you a story. Now you'll say, okay, here I'll be fine. What do you read? Come on. But I opened it up, and I'm seeing who gives. I say, I'm not going to read it. It's so foreign to me. Gilgul and Dibukim, and even though I know in the Kisei Rizal talks about that plenty, but I figured it's not for me. So I open it up, and I see who gives the Askama. I'm opening up the book. Remember right away? No. Sri Pesach Frank. Now, Sri Pesach Frank was a Rav of Yerushalayim. I received Pesach Frank as a shtickle mishpacha, not really to me, but his wife was married to a Shmuel Rozovsky. Right? Shmuel Rozovsky's wife. Who's the Shmuel Rozovsky? Basically the biggest Rosh Yeshiva, basically the biggest literature Rosh Yeshiva in the last, I'd say 70, 80 years. Many of the Rosh Yeshivas of today were his Talmidim. And so his wife, his daughter, his Frank's daughter was the wife of Reb Shmuel Rozovsky. Right? And what did it got to do with me? Because Nachshon Schiller is married to the granddaughter of Shmuel Rozovsky. So that means through marriage, this is Nachshon Schiller's great-great-grandfather, right? So his daughter actually came to my wedding. And I spoke to her many times. She's a really aristocratic lady. And she was actually married to Shmuel Rozovsky twice. How is she married to Shmuel Zosky twice? Because she got divorced from him and then remarried him. That's how he's married to her twice. So she's called Eishes Chaver Pamayim. The wife of Talmid Chacham 2 times over. Because she was, what happened was, Shmuel Zosky was the biggest Rosh Yeshiva, basically, in Eretz Yisrael. But supposedly, the rumor is that she wanted him to become the rabbi of Yerushalayim, like her father was the rabbi of Yerushalayim, and that's why they got divorced. I'm sure there's more to it. Peter May, he got remarried after they got divorced to a Baal Tshuva. There was hope for all of us. And she died after 7 years. And he made some remark about it was the 7 good years, which is referencing that Pari had a dream, 7 good years. And different version of the story. Basically, he got sick. He got Yana Macha, and she remarried him to take care of him. She remarried him to take care of him in the last year of his life. Okay? So I met this lady. Why am I telling this? I have no idea. But I met this lady, and I had a conversation, very aristocratic. We still have my wife still has a pearl necklace she got from her. Here's the name. So I'm opening up and saying, wow, it's coming from an Ashkenazi. I mean, the place is to be frank. I said, let me look into it. So I open it up, and here I am. And he's talking here about how he was learning the Sefer Chemdas Yomim. Right? Now, we have to know a little about the Sefer Chemdas Yomim. There's a famous Sefer called Chemdas Yomim, who we are not too sure who the author is. Okay? You're going to say to me, okay, Chemdas Yomim is all about Yom Tov. Chemdas Yomim. It's a beautiful Sefer. It's a great Sefer, really beautiful. Halacha with Agada, and very interesting sefer. And we're not too sure what the author is, so you say, okay, big deal. There are hundreds of thousands of Torah out there, but we don't know the author of everyone. What is the big deal? Yeah, but the problem is, we actually, here in Ohr Somayach, we actually do something based on the Chemdas Yomim. What is that? The Tu B'Shvat Tish. You ever went to Tu B'Shvat Tish? So you come to Tu B'Shvat Tish, they'll give you out a paper. And it has all the special tefillos from the Chemdas Yom. And there are a lot of things that we do from the Chemdas Yom that has no other source. A lot of, especially Sfarim. Sfarim have a lot of tikkunim. They do a lot of tefillos. Also, a lot of the tefillos we say at the Bris Yitzchak. The tefillos that we say by the Bris before we give the bris of the baby. A lot of the tefillos come from the Chemdas Yom. You say, okay, great. So we don't know who the author is. Big deal. Tefillah, it's a big deal. Yeah. The thing is, most, if not all, hold that the author of Chemdas Yom is who? Nathan of Gaza. The Nathan of Gaza is the author of Chemdas Yom. And that's a little bit of a problem, because Nathan of Gaza was we spoke about him, right? There's a Navi of Shabtai Tzvi. And we're using his book and using his tefillos from someone who was basically a heretic. This is a big problem, but it's basically said. So here, once again, you have the Haredi world and everyone else. Everyone else is sure it's from Nathan Gaza. They're sure. There's different rayas. Many of the songs there, if you look at the acrostics, you'll have the word Nathan of Gaza there, from the acrostics. Okay? Nathan of Gaza himself, we know he wrote many books that were not. He was a genius. The whole thing, he started the Shabtai Tzvi when he was 20 years old. Before he was 20, he already wrote books. And it could be he wrote some of these books so that he could present himself as legitimate. And that when he sells the Shabtai Tzvi thing, he's like, look how legitimate I am. That's a very good book, the Chemdas Yom. Right? So be as it may, the Charedim don't say it's not from Nathan Gaza, because they can't believe that we're saying tefillos from this book. Right? So they have, they say it's from all different type of people, from Rabbi El-Ghazi, whatever. But everyone else, including Yehuda Fataya, is sure it's from Nathan of Gaza. Sure from Nathan of Gaza. Okay? Very important. You should know about Chemdas Yomim. A very important sefer. I said, right? So it says here that he was learning Chemdas Yomim. Now, why was he learning Chemdas Yomim? He figured if he's from Nathan of Gaza, he shouldn't learn it. Because I looked it up last night. That's why I was up all night last night. It says he was reading to the kids the storyline of Chanukkah in this book. Chemdas Yomim is about Chanukkah. It's about all the time. Now most of it is halacha and Musar, but he has this 20 or 30 pages about the Nesach Chanukkah, and he has a whole original storyline about the Nesach Chanukkah. I mean, there are a lot of, we know the Chanukkah. Okay, they fought, they won, they found the oil. Let's eat donuts, right? Yeah, right. But there's Medrash Ante Yoichis, and there's the Book of Maccabees. I'm sure we all know the Book of Maccabees. According to, it's part of the It's part of the Christian canon. I forget which one, the Catholic, the Protestant. One of them actually have part of the canon. No, but they put it into the canon itself, the Book of Maccabees. I think I don't remember the know. I haven't gone to a motel recently to open up the. That's where I see the new Bible, the New Testament. Where do I see the hotel? I have it in the room, right? Open up. You got to read something, right? So I haven't read it up, lady. I don't remember. In some in some of the groups, it's actually there's the Book of Maccabees. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't remember how many there are. Anyway, very interesting. But anyway, so he says. I looked it up last night. I was reading it. It's very interesting. A whole different story of Hanukkah. Very fascinating story. Anyway, I'm not going to go through that right now. It'll take too long. But basically, he said he was reading it. He was reading it to his kids. He says, I don't really hold the Sefer so much, but the story about Hanukkah is really good because it has a lot of drama in it. So he was reading it to his kids, and fine, great. So I opened it up last night. And then let me see. So I read the stories. I'm not going to do that. But he says something very interesting there, Chem to say Yamim. He says there, why was it that Antiochus was all against Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos, right? That's what we call it. Ohr Somayach. If everyone remember what Antiochus was against, Somayach. Shabbos, Mila, Chodesh, right? Those are the three things, right? You're going to go, Hanukkah's come, everyone's going to tell you why these are the most important things, right? So he brings there that the reason why Antiochus was so against it is because he knew that the reason that Yosef somehow or other inculcated or imbued Mitzrayim with these three mitzvahs, and because Yosef inculcated Mitzrayim with these three mitzvahs, that's why they're able to get out of Mitzrayim. Why? The pasuk says, what does the pasuk say? So Yosef says to Paroi, you better get a good man to prepare the land for the years of famine. What's the lashon that the pasuk uses? Yasa pekidim alos v'chimesh et eretz Mitzrayim. What is chimesh? Chodesh. So it really means chimesh is to prepare Mitzrayim with food. But chimesh is what? Chodesh, Mila, Shabbos. Later on, Yosef says, when they come to him and say, oh, it's not fair, we're all going to die. So what he said, you got to give a chomesh. Right? That's supposed to go over there. Where's the pasuk? Yeah, and you should give a chomesh to Paroi. What did it say later on when they went out of? What did it say later on when they went out of Mitzrayim? When they went out of the Mitzrayim, it says v'chamushim olu bnei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim. V'chamushim. So literally means they came armed. They came with weapons. But he said somehow or other that the Yosef used the lashon chomesh to allude to this Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. And it says when the chamushim alu min haaretz, it's alluding cause Moshe put into Eretz Mitzrayim Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. That's how they were able to go up from the land. So you have to look at the side. How he's deviating from the pasuk shot. Pasuk shot is chomesh means a fifth. Over here, chamushim means they went up armed, right? But he's using it as an acronym for Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos, and Antiochus knew about all this, and therefore Antiochus decided to get rid of these three things: Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos. Now, I don't know exactly what he means. About Mila, I do know. It says openly Yosef made all of Mitzrayim do Mila. That's an open Rashi. Yosef made everyone do Bris Mila. So he did put Mila into the system. I don't know exactly what he means that he also put a Chodesh and Shabbos into the system. I don't know exactly what that means. But I know he's right about the Mila part. So he's saying that somehow or other, when it says there, Chomesh and Chamesh, that Moshe somehow, that Yosef somehow other put not only Mila, but also Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos, and that's why they went out of Mitzrayim, Chamushim. Okay? This is a verb, that's not pretty bad for a false Navi, no? Not bad. Not bad for Nathan, from Nathan from Gaza, right? Okay, Peter the May. So here he is. Our Yehuda Fataya is learning Chemis Yom with his kids, and all of a sudden he sees this huge raven fly into the room. Right? The raven. That's part of the raven. I didn't make this up. Nothing to do with Poe. Nothing to do with him. A raven. A huge raven. And he noticed that this raven was being abused and beaten up by 3 huge men. And then he saw that the raven hid under the cloak of Yehuda Fataya. And they started screaming, "Where's the raven? Where's the raven?" And the raven started screaming and ran away. And he heard that they were basically malachim. He quotes a pasuk about La'azatim Leim Abad Nasan Heina. He's talking about Nathan of Azza. And that's it. The next day he was learning Chemes Yom again. Now again, he's learning Chemes Yom, which is the sefer of Nathan of Gaza. He's learning with his kids. And Nathan of Gaza appears to him as an apparition, I guess, as a ghost. And he says, "You got to do me a favor. You got to save me. I can't take it anymore. You got to get me into Gehenna. You got to get me into Gehenna." What do you mean you got to get me to Gehenna? He wasn't even Gehenna. Big Rishaim don't even get to go to Gehenna. That's like a luxury. He was in Kafakela, right? You don't want to be in Kafakela. That's bad news. You don't want to be there. That means you can't even get into the Gehenna. That means you're being like a Kafakela means like a slingshot. You're being thrown around all over the place, and you're getting beaten up by the demons. He says, "You got to help me." He says, "It wasn't my fault. I really believed in Shabtai Tzvi. I didn't do it on purpose. I really thought that he was the man. And you see, I wrote Chemes Yom, and you're learning it, and you see what a good sefer it is." And Yehuda Pati said, "Yes, really good sefer. I really like this stuff. It's really good stuff." Fatih says, "Yeah." He says, "You know what? I'm going to help you out." And he writes here, I kid you not, all the tikkunim that he did to get Nathan Azati, to get him where? To get him into Gehenna. And it says he worked there for many, many days, all over Chanukkah. He was learning Chemes Yom, blah, blah, blah. He got him. Anyway, he was shofar. Finally, another person comes to him. He doesn't know who he is. And he says, "Who are you?" He says, "Good news. Nathan got into Gehenna, so he couldn't leave. But he wanted to thank you. He really wanted to thank you that you got him into Gehenna. Because of you, he got into Gehenna, and there's hope for him." Okay? Fine. Then Rabbi Yehuda Fataya says, and the guy said that when Nathan was getting into Gehenna, the people from Gehenna, the watchmen said, "You can't come in here. You don't deserve to come into here." And he basically produced a credential because Rabbi Fataya did something to Tikkunim, and they said, "You Nathan, you're such a sly guy. You always get your way at the end of the day. I'm just quoting. I didn't make this up. And basically, Rabbi Yehuda Fataya said he had a very bad year that year, and he had a lot of sorrows and a lot of bad things happen to him, and he feels it's because he helped out Nathan of Gaza. That's why it happened. Okay. This is a story. I did not make it up. It's here. Like I said, he's got good askamas. So you're saying, okay, fine, great. He found something. This is from Ayub. So I was not going to say this. I was not going to say any of this today because it's a little bit out of my league over here. It's a little bit out of my league. Except it was about Chanukkah too, so I thought that was interesting. But this morning, so I take my father-in-law to Chakras, a rotation. And this morning I came a little bit early. And I happened to have the book in my talis. It's not my book. It's Rabbi Reuben's book. And I said, you know what? I don't daven too much anyway. I'll like to read during the davening. He likes to read. Let's keep me up. He davens really early, right? And I came like really early, and I was sitting with my father in the car. And, you have to prompt him to speak. I don't know. I have to speak to something. I just noticed he lives on Rehov Gassi now. He used to live in Matzor. We used to Rehov Gassi. And so I randomly, do you know who this Agassi is? I asked my father-in-law. You know who he is? I had no idea who he is. I know in Hebrew, Agassi means a peer. He said, no, I don't know who he is. I said, no, I live in Menachem in the Mishkalov. That I know. I know who he is. He's Talmud of the Gra. Him I know. I said, let's try to look up and see who he is. Let's see who he is, why not? We got a video here. He said, okay. I thought maybe it's a Rishon, maybe it's an early Achros. I whip out the Wikipedia, right, where I get all my information from. I whip out Wikipedia, and I put in, and what's the first thing I see? The first thing I see. Rabbi Shimon Agassi, best friends with Yehuda Fataya. That's the first thing I see. They were best friends. They both lived they lived exactly the same time, and they were literally both students of the Ben Ish Chai, and they both were very influential in Iraq, maybe? Iraq. And I'm like, what's the chance? It goes through the whole thing. He lost his son. Shimon Agassi lost a son. He lost a lot of the children, and he had his one favorite son that survived. He died too, and he was very depressed. And Yehuda Fataya basically got him out of his depression. He told him it was a Gilgul, right? A Gilgul. And then he wrote a whole book. Shimon Agassi wrote a whole book about Gilgulim called Bnei Aaron because his son's name was Aaron. I was like, what is the chance? I've been on the street for 10,000 times, Agassi. I never looked into who's the author. What is the chance that he's going to be his best friend as Fataya? I said, it's Min Shemayim. I'm clearly supposed to talk about Yehuda Fataya today. So that's the background to the background of the story. So there we go. There we go. Okay. So now, we have to know some other things about this. Like I said, this next subject I can literally send 10 shiurim on, but I'm not going to do it. I'll just give you a little background that you have to know. You have to know that Yaakov Emden wrote a very famous sefer because of this Shabtai Tzvi business, which is called Mitpechot Saparim, which is to play on words. The sefer was to basically prove that the Zohar was not written by Rabbi Yochai. This is Yaakov Emden. It's not some. We'll see later on. All the secular scholars agree with that, obviously. That's what they agree. Basically, all right. But he wrote a whole book about. Why would he write a book about that? Now, Yaakov Emden himself quotes Zohar left and right. Because what happened was, I can't go through it, but basically the Shabtai Tzvi people, the Sabbatians, use the Zohar to prove the legitimacy of Shabtai Tzvi. Now, if you ever read the Zohar, the little bit you read, you can read anything you wanted to it. You really can read whatever you wanted to it. But they read into it Shabtai Tzvi, the legitimacy of Shabtai Tzvi, and then they read into it that he's supposed to become a Muslim. Whatever you want, you can read into it. So he wanted to, I don't want to say discredit the Zohar, but to show that you can't use the Zohar as a proof for anything because it wasn't written by Shimon Yochai. So that's his book. Rabbi Yaakov Emden says that the Zohar was not written by Shimon Yochai. You're like, holy cow, not written by Shimon Yochai? That's what we were taught, the Zohar, Shimon Yochai. Like Bomer, right? That's what it's all about, right? So what is the name of the book? It's a play on words, because mitpechot, how do you say in Hebrew a barber? Sapar. Right? So mitpechot, it's really mitpechot saparim. The Mishnah talks about it. It's about a chol moed. You're allowed to, even though you're not allowed to wash a chol moed, you're allowed to write the apron of the barbers. So mitpechot means the aprons of the barber. Mitpechot saparim. But he's making a play on words. You can also read the apron of the book. He's like cutting down the book. He's parsing the book. So it's a reference to Sefer. You can read it Sefer, and you can read it also Barber. So it's a play on words. I'm about to cut the book down. Which book is he about to cut down? The book of the Zohar. You'll say, what? Well, the truth is, if you know a little bit about the Zohar, if you know about a little bit of the history, it actually makes a lot of sense. Because the Zohar, when did it show up? The first time the Zohar came to town was in 1300. Now, you don't have to be too much of a historian to know that Rabbi Shimon Yochai didn't live in the year 1300. He lived in the year 200, right? He lived in the year by basically between 100 and 200. He was a Tana, a late Tana, right? Shimon Yochai. And if we're going to say he wrote the Zohar, how in the world did it show up in year 1300? Where was it for the 1,000 years before that? So a person named Moshe de Leon, who was a Rishon. He's a Rishon. Moses de Leon. They have you go to Spain, they have a nice statue of him. A big makubal. He claimed that the Ramban, you'll know that the Ramban at the end of his life went to Eretz Yisrael. You know that. At the end of life, after he had all the problems with the Christians and his student over there, Paul, whatever his name is, and all the debates, he said he's had it, he's going to Eretz Yisrael. He went with the old man, 70 years old, right? And he said that he was friends with the Ramban, and he said the Ramban sent him the Zohar, the Ramban found it in Eretz Yisrael, and he sent it American, he sent it whatever, what is it called? Express? What? DHL. He sent it over to Spain, and he sent it to me that I should basically disseminate the thing. That's what he said. So it was found in Eretz Yisrael, the Ramban found it, and he sent it to me. Okay? That's what, and that's why it only came up 1,000 years later. Now, there was a guy, a famous Kabbalist named Akko, and he said he really has to find out about this. Really, 1,000 years later, the Zohar, Rav Shimon Yochai, this shows up out of nowhere. He said he wants to go find out. He wants to go visit Moshe de Leon to find out about it. Sure enough, he goes traveling, he goes to Moshe de Leon from Akko. He goes all the way to Spain. And Moshe de Leon says, I swear, I have the original manuscripts. Come to my house. They actually met in a way, they didn't meet in the town where Moshe de Leon lives. They met in a different town. Moshe said, yeah, come to my house next week. I have it there. I'm going to show it to you. And it'll be all proven. Fine, great. He meets him the next week. He died. Moshe de Leon died. He actually never showed Yitzchak min Akko the actual manuscript. So Yitzchak min Akko starts doing research. He asked his wife and daughter, and his wife and daughter says, I got bad news. The whole thing's a forgery. Moshe de Leon made up the whole Zohar on his own. He said, yeah, he needed parnassa, and he figured this would be a good way to make a parnassa, but no one's going to buy his books. And this way, by putting his Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's name on it, it'll probably become a bestseller. Right? And this is reported. I'm not making this up.
His wife and daughter.
Maybe after he died, maybe they were. According to the story, it's not so. Not everyone who lived 1,000 years ago was a big tzaddik. You're right. They're pretty nasty people then too. You know, the Rishonim Kimalachim, yeah, but they're nasty people there too. But Moshe de Leon happens to have been a big Makubal. He has many other books, so it's not so easy or comfortable to start saying that he was fraudulent, that he was a fraud. Because, right? But that's what was reported by his wife and daughter, that he needed money, and therefore he basically forged the whole entire Zohar, which is still a feat on its own. I mean, it's a big book. It's a big book. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And but then Yitzchak from Akko, he met a student of Moshe de Leon, and the student said it's not true. He told that to his wife and kids because he didn't want them to start looking to the book. But really, it's not true. He didn't forge it. So again, the background. The book shows up mysteriously 1,000 years later after it was written. There are these rumors going back and forth about the authenticity of it. So Rabbi Yaakov says, "Let me look at the book." Rabbi Yaakov knew the whole entire Zohar, and he systematically proves that it was not written from the times of, based on many proofs. He proves it cannot be written by the times of Yeshivat Ohr Somayach. At least a lot of it. What does he use? All different types of proofs. One is the main proof is called anachronisms, right? What's anachronisms? You don't want to find, let's say you're watching a movie about the 1700s, all of a sudden an airplane shows up. That ain't good. You got to get a new director for the movie. That's called anachronism. That's when you have something not there. So he proves that a lot of the words in the Zohar were actually didn't exist. It didn't exist in the year 200. They only exist. They actually came into existence only hundreds of years later. So there's no way Shimon Yochai knew these words. What? It's different words. The main word is a word about how to say the word shul. The Zohar uses a certain word and doesn't have there. This is recommended. This is a big makubal who's, if it's coming from an outside campus, forget about this guy. No, this is from Yaakov Ended. And he has a reason for it. He brings other proofs. He brings parts of the Zohar that look exactly like the Kuzari, that look exactly like the Mar Nevuchim. He brings that the people's names in the Zohar lived way after, from Amoraim, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai obviously lived before the Amoraim. He brings that the Zohar talks about the Crusades between the Christians and the Muslims. Now, Muslims didn't exist until the year 600. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai lived in the year 200, right? Right, Mr. Muhammad over here, our good friend, who's causing all the problems in Gaza now, didn't live until the year wasn't around until the year 613, right? Yeshivat Ohr was in the year 200. And how could the Zohar make a reference to the Crusades, which was anyway in the year, which is way after the year 900, right? Many other proofs. The Zohar is very big into the Nikud. Very in the Zohar, he always talks about the signs, the Kamid sign, the Patach sign, and the Segel sign. But it doesn't seem that those signs, the vowels, the concept existed, but the signs that we have seems to be something that was made up in the 9th century. So we have the Shva and the Kametz, the Patach, the signs. And the Zohar is all filled with it, using the signs. Using the Nikud has references of Kabbalistic references, right? It's not so clear about that. There's something named the Shadal. Who's the Shadal? Shmuel David Lusato, who is a great nephew of the Ramchal. Ramchal and his kid died when they were 37. A very famous guy, Shadal, look him up, very famous guy. He proved that all these nikud didn't exist until way later on. And also the signs that we have for cancellations, which is also in the Zohar. The signs that we have, which the Zohar uses, didn't exist in the times of the Gemara. That itself is a whole, you can even share that itself, a whole share in itself. Where did all this nikud come from and all the signs that we have? When they Rayas after Rayas of Yaakov Emden brings, he says that the language seems like, based on the other form that Moshe de Leon had, the language seems to be the same type of language that Moshe de Leon used in other form. On and on and on. So you'll say, so now, all different types of Rayas to this type of Rayas. Now, the Chidah says, Rabbi Yaakov Emden never meant it. He never meant it. Rabbi Yaakov Emden believes the whole thing is from the Rashbi. He just wrote it in order to basically somehow other get to knock down the Shabtai Tzvi guys and somehow other to avoid them, to nullify them or to disqualify them. But he says no way, because you have to remember that Rizal did believe obviously in the Zohar. The Gra definitely believes in the Zohar, right? Okay. Now, the thing is like this. There are many schools of thought. The Rabbi Yaakov Emden, the way he writes it is, part of the Zohar probably is Tanakh, probably some of it is a small part, probably has something to do with Rabbi Shimon, at least from Tanaim, but most of it was added on later on, and most of the Leon maybe he found something, but most of it was added on later on, right? The Haredi camp is going to say, everyone agrees that part of it was added later on. The question is, the Haredi camp will say most of it was written by Rabbi Shimon, and a little bit was added on later on, right? The secular camp, who is that? Gershom Sholem, right? Remember him? Remember Gershom? You want to visit him? He's right across the street. He's buried in Sanhedria. He's buried in Sanhedria. He is their camp that everything, the whole thing is a forgery. The whole thing is a forgery. None of this existed before the 1300s, right? But Menachem Kasher, you know Menachem Kasher, he's the Torah Shlema, very famous guy. He answers up. He tries to answer. I can't go through it. He tries to prove that all the proofs of Gershon Sholem and all the proofs of Yaakov Emden and all the proofs that it's not from Rishon Baruch, he tries to answer it up. He has all different ways of answering up, proving that it is from Rishon Baruch time. The point is, they asked Rabbi Yosef, do you have to believe the Zohar is from Rishon Baruch? He said, it's a good thing, but you don't have to. The Chassam Sofer also agreed with Yaakov Emden that it was not from Rishon Baruch. At least most of it is not from Rishon Baruch. So you should I'm just telling you this. Why am I telling you this? To show you how smart I am. But basically, until it was written, the Zohar was written, and it was questioned originally, but for 300-400 years, where are we holding?
53.
For 300-400 years, no one really got involved. But Rabbi Yaakov Emden, who no one's going to say he's not Haredi, because of the whole thing of Shabtai, he opened up the whole thing. So every book that's going to refer to the legitimacy of the Zohar, I would say the word legitimacy, it's not the right word, because not authenticity, authorship, that's the right word. Because even if you say Moshe de Leon wrote it, even if, it's still a Rishon, and it's still written from Makubal. But be it as it may, everyone, the first stop they go to, everyone refers to this book, Mitpachas Svarim or Saparim, everyone refers to this book, and that's where everyone just works on that book. So you just know, this was Rabbi Yaakov Emden, because of the Shabtai Tzvi story, he opened up the whole thing again, because he felt that it was being abused. Rabbi Yaakov Emden wrote at the end of the book, he feels that we should do Geniza. He said that we should get rid of the Zohar. He felt, even though he quotes it all the time, he says it's too dangerous. He says like the book of Refuahs of Shlomo Melech, and like the Nachash of, we know the Gemara says the Nachash of Moshe was hidden by Chizkiyahu Melech. He felt they should get rid of the Zohar. And there are many Rabbanim who agree with him. Others said, no, it's like Shir Hashirim. If you know the Gemara says they wanted to get rid of Shir Hashirim, and then they said not to get Shir Hashirim. But you heard it here first. If someone tells you the Zohar is not written from the Rashbi, don't start calling him kafir, and don't start calling him heretic, and don't go crazy, because there's a lot of Haredi rabbis. A lot are on this side, and a lot are on that side. Okay? So that's what it is. We don't have it here, but there's a whole group in Taman. There's a whole in Taman, which is a very big which is a very big source of. They learned a lot of Kabbalah there. Right? The Rashash, I think, came from there. There was a whole school in Taim that decided that the Zayar is not the whole Zayar is forged, and they have a whole group of schools. They have a whole group of schools and a whole bunch of shuls called the Dordea. But they said don't learn the Zayar anymore. Meaning, it's hard for me to get involved. Even if you hold there's no Zayar, doesn't mean that there's no Kabbalah. There's all different types of schools. Now, some people say, even Charedim, some say no Kabbalah. It doesn't exist. The whole thing doesn't exist. It's all a bunch of. That's basically saying the Gemara is wrong, and the Rizal is wrong, and everyone's wrong. It's hard to say that, right? But again, this is a different thing. Not that Kabbalah doesn't exist. The Zayar, the authorship of the Zayar is questionable. Okay, Rabbi side. Like I said, I don't know. I can't go through it all, but we can spit 2 shurim. I would go through the Zayar. I'd go through all the problematic quotes over there, try to work it out. Now, the last but not least is the Ramchal. The Ramchal was also hounded by Rabbi Yaakov Emden and the Rabbi Moshe Chagiz. You know, the Ramchal was a very, very young man. At 20 years old, he had no beard. He was not married, but he got a maggid. He got an angel from Shemayim to come visit him. So he claimed, and you could imagine. And he was very modern. He wrote plays. He wrote books and poems, secular plays and poems and books. And you can imagine that this is like Shatz the 101. It's like not. It sounds like Nathan from Gaza number 2. That's what it sounds like, everyone. That's exactly what Nathan from Gaza was. Some genius who, like, at 20 years old, knew everything and said he was another Mashiach. So everyone put him in Cherem. Everyone put the Ramchal in Cherem. And they threw him out from here, they threw him out from there. They made him swear that he wouldn't teach Kabbalah anymore. And he, interesting enough, he didn't fight too much. He sort of acquiesced, and therefore he was sent to Amsterdam. He had to leave Italy, and because he was not allowed to learn Kabbalah anymore, he wrote the books we have, with Yisrael Sharm, Derech Hashem. He wasn't writing that stuff. He was writing Kabbalah books, and that was his thing. He wrote another book of Tehillim. He wrote his own book of Tehillim, and people said, "Oh, you think you're better than David HaMelech?" And he wrote his own Zayar, right? He has his own. We have it. He wrote his own Zayar. Anyway, people were going crazy. One of the main people really went up against him was Yaakov Emden. Said, this is right. But there was a real reason behind it. But this was really something it was really bizarre. Again, he was very modern. He learned in college. He started a medical degree. We don't know if he finished it. He was very modern. He was also a diamond cutter. I don't know how he could be a diamond cutter, a doctor, a playwright, and all this Kabbalah. It's like unbelievable. And so they put him in Cherem. At the end of the day, he had 80 books. 40 of them were burned. 40 of them are hidden, so we don't only have 40 books. But because he was put in Cherem, we actually got the best book. We got Yeshivat Sharm. So basically, at 37, he said he's going to Yisrael, but then he died basically pretty soon afterwards. And I was always wondering, how are these big superstars dying so young? As he's like 39 years old, he died. He came to Yisrael. 2 years later, he died. His wife died. His young son died, and that's it. So I looked it up. What was the mortality rate in those days? It was actually 40 years old. The average lifespan in those days was 40 years old. But then I looked it up and I said, it's a little bit disingenuous. The reason why I was 40 years old because 25% of the children wouldn't make it. So the average, if you take everyone who was born is 40. If you made it to the teens, you could live to 60, 70. So it's a little bit so it is a little bit strange that he died so young, but I guess he did what he had to do in this world, right? So basically, when he died, he's basically obscurity. You know, Ramchal was basically put in Cherem. He was basically not accepted. And all of a sudden, the Gra, when he got the Yeshivat Sharm, the Gra lived like 20 years younger than him. He said, "Wow, this is amazing," and basically, the Gra put him back posthumously. He put him back. He couldn't put it into mainstream. The Gra and Yisrael Salanter. Yisrael Salanter said everyone should learn Yeshivat Sharm. So when he was alive, he was famous or notorious to say, and somehow or other, after he died, there's hope for all of us. After he died, he became, who doesn't learn the Ramchal? Who doesn't learn the Yeshivat Sharm? You know, the Gra says that there's not one extra word in that book. Whenever the Gra would get a book from the Ramchal, he would put on a Big Day Kodesh, Big Day Shabbos, right? So again, this is just a teeny bit. The Ramchal, in his 39 years, has his whole life is just one It's one big back and forth, it's being thrown out from this town, that town, going to exile. But all this is also because of Shabtai Tzvi. We're an hour. Okay, Rabbi said we didn't do everything, nothing really. What I wanted to do today.
You are from 5 a.m.
We got to the reincarnation, we got into the raven, but we didn't get to the stuffed deer head. So that we're gonna have to do next week. The taxidermy. Okay, I'm just gonna have one thing, and that's it. Is it? Mom's 1 minute. Even though the whole fight with Rabbi and Aibsha started in 1951, in 1751, there was a story that happened 25 years before that. There was this book running around called V'Avei Hayom El Ha'ayin, which is actually a part of the last week's parsha. This was a Kabbalistic book that was found on a bacher. This book, I read it a little bit. It is totally bizarre. I can't even go into how bizarre it is, but trust me, it's bizarre. And it's all about Shabtai Tzvi, Shitas, and how God, and God is in exile, and we have to, whatever. It's a very, very weird book. Mashiach is going to save God. Very weird, also very lurid. Anyway, so this book was found on this bacher. This bacher learned on the Rabbi in 1725. The bacher was basically put up against the wall and said, "What do you want from me? I got it from my Rosh Yeshiva. I got it from Rabbi right?" And if he wrote this book, then it shows for sure he's the Shabtai Tzvi guy. So what happened was, why did they find this book on this bacher? Because there were Shabtai Tzvi missionaries running around, going around to yeshiva. So David Oppenheimer, which we'll talk about him next week, the Dayan of Prague, told every rabbi of every town, any bacher that comes back home for Bein Zmanim, check his bag. Now they check for iPhones and God knows what we check for. In those days, they were checking for contraband of Shabtai Tzvi. And they took out this book from this boy. And the boy said, "I got it from my Rosh Yeshiva, leave it alone." Oh, vey. So this was the first time in 1725. Now, Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz, everyone thinks he wrote it. Everyone's sure he wrote it. But he got up and said he didn't write it. He denied he wrote it. And he said, "I'm going to put anyone in Chaim when anyone reads the book." And he said he put everyone in Shabtai Chaim. And he made a Chaim. He himself made a Chaim on 725. But a lot of people say, if you look at the wording of the Chaim, it's like dog whistling, that he really was a Shabtai Tzvi guy. He talked about how Shabtai Tzvi, anyone who Shabtai Tzvi went down into Gehenna, he's been burning in Gehenna. But one of the beliefs that Shabtai Tzvi had to become a Muslim because he had to go to the clippers, had to take out the clippers. Back and forth. Bottom line is, everyone said, listen, Rabbi Yonasan said he didn't write it. He wrote a Chaim. Again, the wording was questionable. Leave it alone. For 25 years, everything was quiet. But then, when the Kamiyah started, 25 years later, when it became the rabbi and they opened up the amulets, that's when it all started again. So there were two versions of Rabbi Yaakov Enden attacking Rabbi Yonasan Eibshitz. There was the first version, when this book called V'Avei Hayom El Ha'ayin, he got out of it then. 25 years later, it resurfaced because of the Kamiyahs. Okay, everybody say? So we have now a little bit more of a background about this. Believe me, next week we'll really start talking about brain death. We're really going to get into it. Next week we're really going to think about getting into it. Okay? Okay, everybody, so stop here.